You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, episode 42. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. Since it's the first Friday of October, it is time for me to tell you about another one of my favorite teachers. But unlike my previous First Friday episodes, this Friday I am telling you about a different kind of teacher. I'm telling you about tarot. So today's episode is called Tarot Lessons for a Skeptic because when I first learned tarot and when I was first interested in tarot, I was actually pretty skeptical. So I'm going to tell you that whole story and how it all turned out. So in this episode, you will hear my tarot journey and some of the lessons that I learned on the way. Just like the episode that I did about the lessons that I learned from Zumba, I'm not really going to be talking a whole lot about tarot in this episode, just like I didn't talk a whole lot about Zumba in that episode. Instead, I will more be sharing with you how I learned what I learned, what impact it's made on my life, and how I think you can use these lessons that I learned because of my tarot journey with tarot for yourself or with anything else that you might be interested in. Even though tarot isn't a person, as my other favorite teachers have been, tarot has taught me so much. So I'm really excited to tell you what I've learned from tarot, as well as maybe dispel some myths that I had and that you might currently hold about tarot, hopefully offer you a new or a different perspective. How did I come to tarot? Why is tarot a part of my life? As a skeptic, why is someone who's not or who wasn't really interested in metaphysical and supernatural drawn to tarot? How did this all happen? About 20 years ago, I was given a tarot deck as a gift. I was really excited to receive it, and it was a unique and interesting gift. And so I happily received the gift and put it on my bookshelf and didn't really do anything else with it until one night I had a little get together at my house, and one of the guests was a sister of one of my friends. So she was visiting from out of town. None of us knew her personally, except of course her sister. And so we were all sitting around having a great time. She saw the tarot deck on the bookshelf and said, "I read tarot. Should we do some tarot readings?" Well, of course we were all super interested and intrigued and excited. So of course we said yes. And I just remember how much fun and how interesting that night was. Here was a person who didn't know any of us personally, and she gave us each personal readings, which were really thought-provoking and interesting and accurate. And I always remember that night, even though I never ended up picking up the tarot deck again, I always remember how much fun I had and how intrigued and just excited all of the guests were at that party. So fast forward 20 years later, I was listening to an interview with someone who is a self-described skeptic and doesn't believe in anything without evidence and wants proof and all of that kind of thing. And he was really bad-mouthing psychics and fortune tellers and anyone in that realm, mediums and tarot readers. And he made the argument in that interview, anyone could just pick up a tarot deck, learn the meanings of the cards, and then do a tarot reading. It's not that difficult. Anyone could do it. And I heard this interview and I heard his claim that anyone could learn tarot and then give a tarot reading. And I remembered back to how much fun I had had with my friends and that tarot deck that one night 20 years ago. And I thought, challenge accepted. I thought I would love to learn how to read tarot cards because it was such a fun thing to do with my friends one night sitting around at home, and I would love to do it in the future with my friends. So I decided I was going to learn how to read tarot cards. At the same time, though, I did have some resistance because very similar to the skeptic who gave me the idea to learn tarot, I also had some tarot resistance. I was also very skeptical of anything metaphysical. I didn't want want to talk about or hear about anything that I couldn't find proof for. I had previously taught critical thinking, and so I was just like, I cannot get involved in something that just has no basis of truth. Even though I had this tarot resistance, I was still excited to learn because I remembered how much fun my friends and I had had, and I just wanted to have that as an option for myself going forward. So I decided I'm going to learn how to read tarot cards. And what actually happened was a huge surprise. I started to see the benefit of tarot almost immediately. And one of the biggest surprises is also one of the lessons that I learned that I'll tell you about here in a moment is I actually got something that I had wanted for a long time and didn't know how to get for myself. Before I tell you about the lessons that I've learned from tarot, I wanted to give you a quick introduction and history and why it was so attractive to me when I actually paid a little bit of attention to it. A tarot deck is actually a metaphor for the human experience. And you know, I love metaphors. The tarot deck really represents the journey that we all go through in life. You could call it the hero's journey. And it's where we celebrate all of our joys. It's where we face all of our trials and tribulations. We're all on a path to enlightenment or self-actualization. And then, of course, when we get to the end of the path, it all starts all over again because life is all about cycles. And if you've ever looked at a tarot deck, you may see some familiar images and you might notice some patterns. And this is for a couple of different reasons. One of the reasons why it might be familiar is because we've probably all seen different depictions and uses of tarot in movies and TV shows. Of course, Hollywood loves to add suspense and mystery to storylines, and they include tarot as a plot device in order to create suspense or drama or deliver bad or scary news. And so that might be a way that you've seen images or heard of some of the more dramatic or polarizing cards. Just to back it up a little bit, as far as the history goes, it is most likely that tarot was developed in the 1400s when paper became available. So once humans had the ability to use paper, then we also had the ability to use cards. And so cards were created. A lot of different card games popped up during this time period, parlor games and games of chance. And the specific game of tarocchi became popular during the 1400s in Italy. And so it is most likely that the tarot deck that we use today derived from that Italian triumph game or tarocchi. And then it's likely that those card games moved from Italy to the rest of Europe, and the French finally dropped the ending of the word, and that's where we get the modern day word of tarot with a silent T at the end. So that's just a history of how long tarot has been around and where it came from. When we look at the actual tarot deck, we notice that it's a deck of 78 cards, and the deck is made up of two parts: the major arcana, which is 22 cards, and that part of the deck really depicts that journey that I told you about. Its images and scenes and meanings are really relevant to different parts of our lives and different parts of the experiences that we have on our journey. And then the minor arcana, which is the other 56 cards, those you might recognize because they more closely resemble the playing cards that we know and use today for solitaire or poker or bridge. So if you think about our modern day playing cards with the four suits and the court cards, that's pretty similar to the 56 cards in the minor arcana. You might be wondering how I learned tarot. After I accepted the challenge that I heard from the interview, I decided to go all in. I watched online courses, I watched videos on YouTube, I got books, I joined study groups, and I just really decided that I wanted to become proficient in reading tarot cards. My goal was that I would be able to do a reading without referencing a book or my notes or checking on a meaning. I just wanted to be able to do a reading seamlessly from the top of my head and have it be somewhat accurate. So I did all of these different things. I watched other readers, made my own flashcards, and I practiced. And as I was growing my knowledge, I realized I really need practice with actual people. And around that same time, when I started learning tarot, that was also the time that I heard about massive action, that the way that you get what you want in life is by taking massive action towards that goal. So I thought, what is a way that I could take massive action to becoming proficient in reading tarot cards? And the answer was, I guess I need to do like a huge amount of readings, like 100. So I did make a goal for myself that I would do 100 tarot readings so that I could have a lot of practice and get a lot of feedback and really force myself to learn and become proficient. And through all that practice and through all that study and through all that time and effort, I did become proficient in reading tarot, and it has given me so much. So in today's episode, I want to share with you 6 of the very valuable lessons that I learned from tarot. So the 6 lessons are the value of my own determination. I learned to recognize my intuition. I learned that life is all about cycles. I was able to recognize the universality of the human experience. I saw that contradiction can and does coexist. And of course, tarot was my gateway into the world of woo. So the first lesson that I learned is the value of my own determination. Since I wanted to be good at tarot and be able to deliver those readings seamlessly, I was determined. That is what motivated me to practice and study and read and watch and listen. And as I did all of those different activities, I started to see so much progress. I started to notice that I was learning, that I could remember the card meanings, and that I could deliver a reading. And because I had set the goal for myself of doing 100 readings, I needed to figure things out. I needed to get creative. Pretty early on in my challenge, I realized I wasn't going to have the time to sit down with 100 different people. So I needed to find out or figure out a more effective, time-efficient way to do this. What I figured out how to do was that I could deliver readings as a personalized recorded video where someone would send me their question and I would record a video for them on my phone showing them their cards, and then I could email that to them. So I was really excited that I figured that out and that it worked so well and that it was still an effective reading. I also got really creative around that time, trying to figure out how I could meet more and more people. So one example of creativity was that I actually set up a table for the trick-or-treaters, for their parents. If their parents were interested in having a tarot reading while their kids were collecting candy, they could stop by my little tarot table that I set up outside of our trick-or-treating station. And what was the value of all of this determination, of all of this work that I did? Obviously, I became confident in my tarot abilities. I learned so many new skills, including creativity to meet new people, to ask for referrals, to figure out the technology side of it. And that determination gave me so many other opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It introduced me to different people and resources, things new to me that I wouldn't have encountered without my determination to learn tarot. The second lesson that I learned from tarot was the ability to notice and hear and trust my own intuition. In the years leading up to me becoming interested in tarot, I heard a lot of people saying, hey, just trust your gut or listen to your intuition. And I wanted to do that. I agreed with them and I saw value in it. But I didn't know how. I didn't know what my intuition sounded like. I didn't know how to check in with my gut. And so what I noticed as I started learning tarot and as I started doing readings was that as I was doing readings, I didn't just want to repeat back the rote memorized meaning or significance of the card that I had spent all that time learning, because each reading had a different question or a different person or a different context. And so I wanted to be more intuitive and more in tune with the person in front of me or the question they had asked or the spread that we were working on. And the cards gave me a reason to get quiet and listen. And it's almost like the cards helped me get out of my own way because I was so focused on checking in and trying to figure out what the meaning was or what the cards were trying to suggest that it did give me a chance to really look inward instead of looking outward for the answers. And that was what helped me recognize what my intuition was. And as I was doing readings, sometimes I would get little sparks or hits of intuition. Sometimes they would just kind of pop up for me. And at first I wasn't sure if I should bring them up or if I should mention them. And as I got a little more confident and a little more familiar, and when those hits would come up to me, sometimes I would interrupt myself and say something like, well, this doesn't really have anything to do with this card, but I'm just kind of getting this idea. And I would say whatever that intuitive hit was, and it would be right. And then that's how I started noticing, okay, so this is what my intuition is. So this is what it means to get an intuitive hit. And it was so exciting and so confirming. And that was really what taught me how to recognize and listen to and trust that inner voice inside of me, my intuition. And the third lesson that I learned from tarot is that life is all about cycles. The major arcana is basically a metaphor for a cycle that we all go through, that we all follow in life. We start out as a beginner, naive, fresh-faced, innocent, and then we go through the trials and we face the problems and the challenges. Plus, we get to celebrate the joy and connect with other people. That's basically the story of the major arcana. And that story has been told in tarot cards for hundreds of years. Recognizing that that story existed in Italy in the 1400s and also exists today in Arizona just demonstrates to me how much life is about cycles, how much everything comes full circle. And tarot came to me at a time in my life when I was facing some personal challenges and some interesting cycles in my own life. And it was so helpful for me and so confirming for me to recognize, oh, just because I'm in this situation today doesn't mean I'm always going to be in this situation. And just because this quote unquote negative thing happened to me doesn't mean that it's always negative. So learning the meanings of the tarot cards and seeing the cycle of the major arcana at the same time that I was facing my own trials and tribulations and challenges just really demonstrated to me how life is good and bad, how life consists of both dark and light, and how life is definitely 50-50. The fourth lesson that I learned from tarot goes along with that life is all about cycles very well. It's the lesson of the universality of the human experience. When I think about tarot being around for over 600 years and these same themes and images and meanings and interpretations being looked at and discussed 500 years ago in Italy or 50 years ago in Australia and today online on the internet, it makes me realize how universal and how common our human existence, our thoughts, our behaviors, our experiences, and our fears are. And the fact that the same images and meanings and interpretations are still being used in modern day times that were used during the Renaissance and during the Industrial Revolution proves to me that humans connect with the meanings and messages of the cards. Those meanings and messages didn't fade away because they were no longer useful or relevant. They've stood the test of time. The next lesson that I learned from tarot has been so helpful, and I call on it so frequently. And that lesson is that contradiction can and does coexist. Right around the time that I was studying and practicing tarot, I was also being introduced to and started following some of my favorite teachers. And I learned so many life-changing concepts, and I put into practice a lot of things that I was learning around that time. And two of my favorite teachers, who I've talked about in previous episodes, Brooke and Jess, taught me so much about how to look ahead at life or how to behave and how to think about what was happening. And I loved their messages, but at times their messages that I was learning kind of at the same time seemed to be contradictory, or at least I was interpreting them as in contrast to each other. So at first I had a really hard time with this contradiction and it was frustrating and I didn't know how to reconcile it. But when I thought about those messages in relation to the tarot cards, I realized, well, of course those conflicting or contradicting messages can coexist. Of course, it's not just one answer or one way to think about our thoughts. I likened Brooke, who's very executive and action-oriented, and she has a system and a foundation for everything, and everything is very structured. I likened her to the Emperor card. And Jess, who is more of a go with the flow, trust your intuition, look inward for the answers, don't worry about what the outside world says you should do or what has to happen, and just really make sure that you're always maintaining your high vibe and trusting yourself. To me, that reminds me a lot of the High Priestess. And when I think about those two cards, both having so much value and being so helpful and so enlightening on a tarot spread, I realize, wow, those two teachers can also be so helpful and so enlightening to me in my own life. Another kind of contradiction that I also love about tarot is that there are no rules. There's no tarot authority. There's no one true deck. Tarot can and does evolve. People make it their own and use it however they want. And you can look at a card today and make it mean one thing, and then look at the same card again tomorrow in a different spread and make it mean something completely different. And both of those interpretations would be accurate. And the final lesson I learned from tarot that I want to tell you about today is how tarot was a gateway into the world of woo for me. Because I opened my mind and accepted tarot, I was also open to other ideas that I would have previously dismissed. So one example of that in the past, before tarot, in my previous critical thinking days, I would have rolled my eyes whenever anyone said the idea or concept of manifesting something or the law of attraction. And because I was open to the world of woo with tarot, now I actually love and use and believe in the idea of manifesting something. And it's been so fun and so helpful and so interesting in my life. Another more woo concept or practice is using crystals to help solve different problems or give different energy. And even though I am not a crystal expert, I certainly haven't dedicated as much time to crystals as I had to tarot. I now am so interested and excited to learn more about crystals. And I know I never would have considered them if I hadn't been introduced to them alongside of my tarot journey. And tarot and woo in general has just opened my mind and given me so many opportunities to meet different people and join different groups and read different books and just get to know myself in a different way that I had completely shut off before. So I'm so grateful for tarot for teaching me to be a little more open-minded about things that I was previously pretty close-minded about. And just like for all of my episodes that are dedicated to my favorite teachers, I also have a love note, thank you card, and fan letter for tarot. Tarot, thank you for being so popular that you have stayed around for so long that I could eventually find you and learn how helpful you are. Thanks for being both a fun party activity, but also a creative and imaginative way to do thought work and self-coaching and even coaching. I love that you are so open and loose, that artists and creators have used your basic elements to come up with the most interesting and beautiful and thought-provoking tarot decks and apps and art pieces and calendars and all sorts of things, all related to tarot. And you have provided me with hours of entertainment, reflection, and self-discovery. Plus, you have been a vehicle for me to learn the new skill of reading tarot cards, meet new people, and get in touch with my own intuition, which is probably the best gift of all, as well as so many other benefits. And I am sure that there are so many more benefits to come. So thank you, tarot. All right, I am so curious now. What are your thoughts and reactions to hearing about the lessons that I learned from tarot? I'm also curious about your tarot experience and questions. Can you imagine yourself using tarot or any other tool to help you learn some life lessons or to recognize cycles or to get you in touch with your own intuition or just to connect with your own thoughts and beliefs better? Send me an email at hi@bexby.org and tell me your tarot experience or questions. I'm so curious to hear. Or you could also leave a comment on the show notes at bexby.org/tarot. That's TAROT. And thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed hearing about my tarot journey. If you are one of my favorites, meaning you're on my email list, I would like to do a recorded video reading for you if you want one. So in the email that I sent to you this week, along with this episode, I sent you a link that you can click on and request your recorded tarot reading from me. And if you're just listening to this episode here in October of 2020 and you're not on my email list yet, please go to bexby.org/tarot so that you can join my email list and request a free recorded tarot reading. I'm not sure how many people will request these, but I'm going to do my best to get them all completed and emailed back to you by the end of October 2020. So go check either on the website at bexby.org/tarot or look in your email for the link to request your reading. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed hearing about it. I'm so excited next week to go to the complete different end of the spectrum. We will be talking about critical thinking. So thanks again for listening today and have a great week. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Also, think about someone who you know who would love this episode and share it with them. There should be a share button on your app if you're listening to this on your phone. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexby.org to see how we can work together.